Here on 4 Now with a behind-the-scenes report on last night's Super Bowl in New Orleans, hot off the satellite, is Ian Wooldridge.
First of all, the reality of first and goal. Harry. That one registered 3.8.
There have only been 20 Super Bowls, and New Orleans has staged 6 of them, simply because people adore coming here. This is the birthplace of jazz. It's the home of Mardi Gras. It's the showplace of the Deep South. Now, it's true that the state governor is currently arraigned on charges of fraud and corruption, but this has always been the town of adventurers, of writers and artists and the makers of music. It's a sign of the times, I suppose, that you can't even get a decent poker game any longer on a Mississippi riverboat. The card sharps have gone to their graves, and the gaylords have gone into computers. So New Orleans went into Super Bowl, the violent soap opera of American sport. Anyway, it's a romantic, if somewhat spurious way, to come to the football game that will stop the whole of America. America's craving for roots is satisfied on every corner. The very street names testify to a melting pot past. The French got here first, the Spanish took over, the French got it back only in a moment of ill-judged philanthropy to sell more than the whole of Louisiana to America for $15 million. So began the gracious age of New Orleans. The plantation owners, albeit with the help of a few thousand slaves, were not averse to a nice pad in town. Today, the arty set have taken over. There have always been plenty of distractions for writers here, but somehow they still managed to get the books out. William Faulkner wrote several of his masterpieces here, and so did Tennessee Williams, including A Streetcar Named Desire. But now the streetcar has been replaced by a bus, and Desire is a suburb that is less than desirable. Writers of less durable literature flock in for Super Bowl. This is the biggest press gang of sports reporters ever to assemble for a single game. America's National Football League turns somersaults to woo the media. They provide food, drink, transport, and if you're too lazy or drunk to write a story, they issue a snowstorm of handouts that virtually does it for you.
I may come up with that, so I don't know.
Well, with 6 days still to go, the New York Times has given 14 pages to Super Bowl in a single issue. The Boston Globe has 23 reporters here. Well, inevitably, this has led to an hilarious crisis. Altogether, there are 2,400 media men here committing what can only be described as journalistic incest. They're interviewing one another.
Got me. Excuse me, sir, but I'd like to talk to you about this incest business.
Incest business. Are you into incest yourself?
No.
Unlike England, where our cup final players want money for saying good morning, America's Super Bowl stars are wheeled in to give endless interviews whether they like it or not. Some get so word-weary that they need a prompt.
Gary, what really turns the Chicago Bears on?
Poetry.
Poetry? What kind of poetry?
Well, blank verse or iambic pentameter, the whole spectrum.
Who's your favorite poet?
T.S. Eliot, who says, not with a bang, but a whimper. You know?
Can we say bang on national television?
Right. And how many times have you been asked the same question over and over again?
Many times. You know, you would think that at least someone right next to you would hear what your question is, but most of the times they don't listen. So I just have to repeat the same thing over and over and over.
I mean, I appreciate the fact that you're here, and it's a tremendous moment.
I appreciate it really.
But, I mean, do you actually like doing this, to be exposed to this kind of questioning for an hour at a time like this?
Well, as long as it's just for an hour. You know, if you go into a bar and you're having a pint or whatever, you don't want to answer the same question or sign autographs. But it seems to be part of the territory, and you know, if that means that you have to do that in order to get here to New Orleans to play the Super Bowl, then I'm willing to do it every single year.
Dave Anderson of the New York Times is one of America's most powerful columnists. Isn't there some way that this could lessen the critical faculties of a writer? You know, you get press conferences later on?
I think it might enhance the critical faculties, really, because you tend to get annoyed at this sometimes, and yet I don't see how else they could handle it because of the crush of so many media people.
What does this actual event mean to America? Is there anything to compare with it?
Not for one day. The World Series certainly compares with it, but the World Series is spread over a week, 4 to 7 games, for example. But for one day, it's become, in a sense, a national holiday. I mean, the world just sort of stops in America on their Super Bowl Sunday, and everybody watches the game or goes to parties. They may not watch the game, but they go to the parties.
It's time for press conferences. A few of the Pats went out on the town, but a few are stuck here with Coach Berry in this madness with all the media from all over New England and the rest of the United States. All right, we just get that Duke and then head over to the editing bench.
Sounds good. What a mess, huh?
All right.
Still haven't got any Cajun food yet.
This remorseless hype is the very product of Super Bowl, the greatest self-publicizing and marketing operation in the history of sport. Cy Burek, aged 76, was sports writing in the calmer days of Babe Ruth, Jesse Owens, and Joe Louis. These players get enormously highly paid. But do they get paid, you think, for answering the same questions over and over again? These men have just answered them in Boston. They get off the plane here. They immediately ask the same question. Are they paid for that?
I think so. I think so. I don't feel sorry for them from that aspect. I feel sorrier for myself because I have to listen to the same answers all the time.
50 miles out of New Orleans, in a warehouse capable of accommodating 2 jumbo jets, another vital ingredient of Super Bowl is in rehearsal. The day of the halftime high kickers with provocative fishnet stockings is gone. Today, the interval show has to have social significance. Hence a group with the ambiguous title of Up With People. Conscious that the eyes of more than 110 million television viewers will be upon them in America alone, the cast of more than 500 rehearse 11 solid days for their 12-minute spot. The theme is international goodwill, though it must be said that the Libyan flag has been hastily removed.
Find the road to get there ain't easy. There's so many different sides. When tomorrow comes together, we'll be there. We'll be there.
Up With People, a movement shining with zeal, was founded by a man named J. Blanton Belk. Now, you make a big point of saying you're non-profit making, and I'm not suggesting you're anything else. Someone I talk to says you're halfway, or often we're thought of being halfway between the Moonies and the Jehovah's Witnesses. Now, what do they mean by that?
I don't think we're halfway. I think we're the whole way away from them. I have nothing to do with that at all. That's Jehovah's Witnesses and the Moonies, I understand, is a religious organization and could be considered a cult. We're an international educational cultural organization. We have no religious or political ties at all.
And how much do they pay to learn this message?
You mean how much they pay to travel with us? They pay $6,200 a year, which is a student fee, and that covers all their travel, that covers their clothing, that covers their housing, and that doesn't touch, well, it touches. That's about half of what it costs us to take a student, because each of these students will travel 30,000 miles. If you started adding that up in transportation costs, you get some idea. And most of these students, half these students, no way they can pay that. And they usually spend a year or 2 years raising that money because they want this experience for a year. And we have a small scholarship fund. We need a lot more. We could use British pounds,
Who could?
Russian rubles.
Meanwhile, back in town, one appears to have got mixed up in a mafia funeral. Not at all. The owners, that is to say the men who own all 28 league football clubs in America, have arrived to give their Super Bowl party. 3,000 guests, but no cameras inside in case a few husbands are moonlighting. There awaits enough food to save Ethiopia, enough drink to refloat the Titanic. The party cost $500,000, the equivalent of the revenue of precisely 29 seconds of one of the Super Bowl's TV commercials. This year, both owners of the Super Bowl finalists are tasting its glory for the very first time. Billy Sullivan, fourth-generation American-Irish and owner of the underdog New England Patriots, has waited most of his 70 wheeling and dealing years for such national acclaim. His golf swing reflects the man, unschooled but determined.
Which are you more nervous about, the golf or the game?
Well, all I can say is if the Patriots play a game like I play golf, I'm afraid it's going to be a long day on Sunday.
You know, it's an interesting concept to a British audience that one man owns a club. You've got to be a very rich man to play this game.
Well, in most cases that's true, but I think all I'm rich in is in a family that understands what the work ethic is all about and practices it. I think as a world account success, I wouldn't be considered rich unless it's measured on how much money you owe.
Right. Well, how much would it have cost you to get into the game, to run it through bad times, and to get here to the Super Bowl?
Well, in 1960, when the American Football League was formed, a franchise cost $25,000. I didn't hit that. Scrambling around with my Navy savings bonds and the little cash I had and emptying out the piggy banks of the 6 children and the pocketbook of my wife. I came up with $8,300, borrowed the rest, and we're in business.
That was at $25,000?
$25,000.
And what could you sell it for now?
Well, the last 3 teams that have been sold at an average of $70 million. I think one was an average of $71 million. I think one went for 70, the other for 71, and another for 72. And I really believe the great phenomenon in American history, in sports at least, came when, after only 6 years, our league merged with the older league, and the first byproduct of that is what they call the Super Bowl, which has been described by Joe Alioto, the former mayor of San Francisco, who's married to my daughter. He's described the Super Bowl as the greatest show on earth. Get in the hole! Get in the hole! Thank you.
You've come a long way from the days when you were just a humble sports writer.
Well, I'm still very humble. I think one time your distinguished leader, Sir Winston Churchill, was Allegedly, his wife said that she was tired of him criticizing a distinguished member of the parliament whose name I don't recall. And he said, well, why are you troubled? And she said, because he's a very humble man. And Sir Winston is reported to have said, yes, he is, and he has a lot to be humble about. And believe me, I have still plenty to be humble about.
But then you got into oil. Does the description owner fit Chicago's Mike McCaskey, a former Harvard business professor?
Not necessarily in the National Football League. In the case of the Chicago Bears, it's my family who owns the team, and the family thought it quite important to centralize control of the operation of the team in one person, and they asked me to do that. And that's what my title signifies, President and the Chief Executive Officer.
So does that mean you inherited the club?
In a sense, it was my grandfather, George Hallis, who founded the Chicago Bears and nurtured them through many decades and until they got to their present state. So in a sense, yes. It's only because I'm George Hallis's grandson that I become eligible to be named, and I suppose it's my business background and experience that led my family to ask me to take over running the club.
If there is such an animal as an archetypal American football club owner, what would he be like? I mean, rich, obviously.
No, not necessarily at all. And in fact, the football club is my family's principal asset, and we live comfortably, but we're not rich by any means. And that has a marked impact on how we run our football club, and that makes it quite a bit different from several of the other clubs, which are in fact run by quite wealthy individuals who made their wealth in other businesses, in real estate or in oil or in the automobile business, and then bought an NFL franchise. In our case, my grandfather started the NFL and started the Chicago Bears. So football has been our one and only industry since the beginning.
I would guess there wouldn't be too many club executives, presidents, or owners who did voluntary work in Ethiopia.
No.
Which you did.
I did, and I'm unique in that respect, yes.
What made you do that? I mean, you were probably a young man when you did that.
That was right after college. I had felt that my life to that date had been benefited from any number of particular opportunities, and it was time to try and make some return, and I thought that being in the Peace Corps for 2 years and trying to make a contribution in another country might be a way to say thank you for some of the benefits I'd received.
Well, I think that makes you, a very nice man. Can you afford to be a nice man in the business you're in?
I think you have to be a very tough individual, and you have to be a very fair one. And my grandfather was thought of as tremendously stubborn and passionate and tough, and I think some of those characteristics have stayed in the family.
Britain's growing fascination for a sport which was once patronizingly regarded as America's equivalent of the Eton Wall game caused a great deal of surprise here. America is such an insular country that it could hardly believe that Channel 4 was televising the match late into a British night, or that British newspapers for the first time mostly had reporters here. It was time to ask Pete Rozelle, the NFL commissioner, what happens next in the British connection. Rozelle, on the subject of expansion, we've heard since we've been here that there are plans for a game in London in August between two of your teams. Can you confirm that?
We have investigated it, and we hope to have two of the playoff teams play in a game in London, in Wembley Stadium, on the Sunday after the Hall of Fame game. In other words, a week before the regular preseason starts. That will be a subject for collective bargaining. We'd have to get Gene Upshaw to agree to it. I think it's a big plus in promoting the league. I think the players would enjoy 4 or 5 days in London, and televised back here could have great impact. We're aware of the fact that the weekly highlight shows a week late in London have generated about 4 million audience, 4 million viewers each week, and that the Super Bowl, which I believe will start at 11 o'clock Sunday night in London, they expect to have between 8 and 10. So we are very interested in trying to show our sport abroad. Perhaps in someday it could be a factor in what we sell in television.
Television, yes, but what of a future for the game in Britain? John Smith, well known to Channel 4 viewers, started his sports career as a soccer centre-forward with Swindon Town and ended it as a kicker with the New England Patriots.
I kicked with a shoe. They played games in Mexico, they played games in Japan. They've tried in England, and I think they're going to pursue it in England because of the interest in the game that Channel 4 has generated through the program, and the fact that so many teams playing over there is of great interest to the NFL owners, because they're always looking for that
for more
extra cash.
That's right. So basically you're admitting that maybe it's to keep the thing on Channel 4 more than anything else.
It is, but I mean, I can envision down the road a European division. There's an Eastern division in the United States. There's a Central division. I can see a European division. We could have a team in London, one in Paris, one in Rome. And there's the interest in Italy. There's the interest in France now. And I can see that down the road.
Meanwhile, Joni Carter's been wandering around the press conferences sketching. Quite a card, Miss Carter. Bored with painting portraits of the Californian rich, she sailed in a transatlantic yacht race and then devised a new art form. In Super Bowl Argo, it blew the minds of the management. I'm absolutely intrigued with that. How does the system work?
Well, basically, it's a computer painting system, and it has about 16 million colors on it. And it has a stylus or a light pen connected to a pad, and I tell the computer I want a green, and it gives me a green, and I paint right on the screen. And it ends up on a television screen.
But what do you actually do now when you're with the players?
Oh, here I'm coming around and I'm doing sketches of what the press actually goes through to get the interviews with the players. I want to show how hard it is to get these stories covered. So I go and make quick sketches of the things that are going on, and then I go back to my room at night and I stay up all night and translate what I've sketched here onto paintings on my computer. This is my paints and canvas. The NFL invited me to come to New Orleans and paint Super Bowl scenes on the Diamond Vision screen, so I packed up all 200 pounds, jumped on an airplane, and here I am. Right now I'm painting on my Aurora computer. This is my brush called a stylus. This is my canvas up here, and these are my directions. I paint down here, but the work comes out up here. Now I've told the Aurora to give me some black paint and a skinny brush, and I'm going to start a sketch of McMahon since he's the star of the show right now. Notice that no paint's coming out down there. It's all coming out up on that screen. What I'm doing here is drawing his uniform shirt. And now I'm going to show you how fast I can fill it in with black paint. Some of the work I'll be doing on the Diamond Vision screen, I have less than 3 minutes to do it. And what's great with the computer is you can paint real fast. Here I'm putting some flesh tones in. I've got 16 million colors to choose from, so I can really figure out exactly what I want. This is a picture of McMahon further along with that famous headband and those sunglasses. Right now I've zoomed in and I'm adding some pixels to make him look real Hollywoody. I just found out that his uniform is going to be white, so just like that I can change it. Here's a painting I did at the Superdome with my little Mitsubishi screen painting way in the background. Here's all 4 guys getting ready for the action, but since Ditka and McMahon look a little fierce there, I'm going to move them a little bit further away from Eason and Barry. Tell the computer to save that portrait, bring back up my Superdome painting, and bring the portrait back up. So here it is, my first 1986 Super Bowl painting.
And do you get applause when it goes up on the screen out there?
I haven't done it yet, I don't know.
Right.
So for Joni Carter, instant painting on a canvas as large as some of Michelangelo's. All shown in a gallery which just happens to be the biggest air-conditioned room in the world. But by now the fans have landed, 70,000 of them from Chicago and Boston.
By the eve of Super Bowl, Bourbon Street is a very fair imitation of Dante's Inferno. The bars are open 24 hours a day, and every pleasure known to man is right on tap. Down here, you can do yourself so much damage that there's a very fair chance of missing the match. Join me after the break.
Over Bourbon Street tonight, I see faces as they pass beneath the pale lamplight. I've no choice but to follow that call. The bright lights, the people, and the moon and all.
Call it herd instinct or community spirit, Americans have a passionate desire to be there. 2 streets from here, you can walk your dog undisturbed. But the unrelieved bedlam of Bourbon Street, where the drinks have doubled in price overnight, is magnetic. Southern courtesy reaches new levels when you check how the law prepares to handle what we would see as a potentially volatile situation. They send round a police department spokesman to discuss it in your hotel room.
You've got 70,000 people dropping in town, all for a good time. The bars are open round the clock. Isn't Super Bowl a tremendous headache for you?
Not when you're used to handling Mardi Gras every year and the crowds that come in for Mardi Gras who are looking for the free time. Naturally, with the Super Bowl, you have a different type of crowd who's a spending crowd, more or less. They come in, they have their money, they spend, and they have a lavish, great time. And we're used to dealing with Mardi Gras. Naturally, this isn't our first Super Bowl. We've had Super Bowls in the past, and we've learned from those experiences.
You're very calm about it, but what are going to be the biggest problems for you? Drunkenness, presumably.
That would probably be our biggest concern. People who are not used to partying 24 hours. That's the spirit of New Orleans, just a constant party, moving from the dinner table back to the bar and into the streets to have a good time. We tolerated the intoxication to a great extent, and when it becomes abusive or it begins to infringe on someone else's good time,
Down at this quieter end of Bourbon Street, you can find a real gem. It would be slanderous, of course, to describe the lady in here as the worst entertainer even in the Northern Hemisphere. But she does have a unique gift for playing the piano at one speed and singing at another.
I could have danced all night, could have danced all night, still it begged for more. I could have spread my wings and done 1,000 things I've never done before. I'll never know what makes me so exciting. Like all at once, my heart took flight. I only know when he dance with me. I could have danced
The venue is the Louisiana Superdome, which, if they didn't play the Super Bowl here occasionally, they might just as well knock down. Estimated at $35 million, it actually cost $163 million, a tiresome miscalculation to say the least. It's still losing $5 million a year. But everything surrounding Super Bowl is on this cosmic scale. A 1-minute TV commercial during the 4-hour show cost $1,100,000. The Patriots' basic wage bill for the year in which they were finally beaten out of sight was $5.5 million. Is British business acumen at hand? In the shadow of the Superdome, we found what we've come to know well on English sporting scenes like the Open Golf Championship in Twickenham, a tented village. Here, too, was Duncan Reevy from Leeds. Duncan, what on earth is a Brit doing in this amazing setup?
Well, it started 12 months ago, Ian. As you know, corporate hospitality or tented villages in England have been going on for the best part of 10 years. And I've been in that business for 10 years and have my own company, Total Sport, in the UK. And the Americans came across to see us almost 12 months ago. They perceived the need in this market and came across to gain our expertise in terms of setting the whole thing up and marketing it. And I'm pleased to say that this is the result, our first Total Sport America package at the Super Bowl.
So how much is it going to cost to come in here today?
Well, to come into the village, it can cost anything between $150 and $250, depending on the type of menu, the type of entertainment included in the marquee.
But if the British are getting a toehold on Super Bowl, what, if any, will be the influence of Super Bowl on British sport? Pete Rozelle. Now, about this game of yours, it's so essentially American. Do you think it is exportable?
I think that any sport is very difficult to export to another country. I know that soccer's had some difficulty in the United States, and obviously it's the world's most popular sport. You can take into consideration all the countries that watch it and play it. But I think that with football, it's possible in the years to come, with the interest that's been shown already in Great Britain, that it could become a entertainment factor in London.
In the past 2 or 3 days, I mean, you've made 2 references to London and American football. One was at your press conference, one on the program yesterday. Is this missionary work? I mean, are you trying to spread the game into Britain, into Europe?
Well, one, we think it's exciting here for the fans to see on television a game that we're playing abroad, as an example in London. And the other factor is we would like to, of course, someday have the regular season carried live. And I imagine if enough fans are interested, well, it could happen someday.
To be mildly cynical about it, I mean, is your interest in television contracts, if they're big enough, or is it in fact getting the game spread around the world?
Both. We want the interest in it to be reflected overseas. We show a number of countries, as you know, in the game, the Super Bowl game. We have 35 different countries it's going to, and we also would like to see perhaps maybe 5-10 years, I don't know, but it's possible to televise, might be possible to televise live our regular season, and that there would be sufficient interest in England.
Tragically, in our game in Britain, you know, soccer, we've had a lot of crowd trouble. And what's amazed me in a week here, and particularly as all these people come in, many of them drunk, you don't seem to have any trouble in your grounds.
Well, we have, I think it's different in some respects. One, you have a number of stadiums for soccer around the world where there are a number of standees, a number of people who stand. Here we have seats for everyone, and we don't have a moat around the field, but the clubs will have security, police security around the field at the end of games normally, and we don't have many. Sometimes we do. The Patriots this year had an incident where the fans went on the field at the end of the game. They were so excited. It was raining, cold. They tore down the goalposts, metal goalposts, and they carried them out of the stadium through the tunnel. We're walking down the street with them when one of the poles struck a high wire. And apparently 5 of the fans ended up in the hospital with the shock from the electricity.
Right. What specific rules now do you have for Super Bowl this afternoon? What can't fans do?
Well, they can do anything they want as long as they're not disorderly and disturbing the other fans watching the game, and they can't go on the field.
Match day, 4 p.m., New Orleans. It could be Main Street, anywhere, USA. Deserted. It's proof that here, the media is the message, that the overwhelming nurturing of press and television has paid off. Almost everyone's at home, including an old footballer and sports broadcaster.
Do you think that occasions like this help shape our national character, or are they really just kind of entertaining diversions from things like the deficit and terrorism and Gaddafi and so on?
Well, I think it's typically American, that we can have or be diverted by things like this from the serious problems. I think it's part of the American personality, and I know that other countries take athletics seriously too, but there's something different about it in America. It's so much a part of American life that I think it's a part of our personality.
The match was marvelous only if your roots were in Chicago. Otherwise, it was a vertical drop into anticlimax as the Bears ran the New England Patriots back into the stockade. Many Chicago fans had followed their team without a ticket, merely to be in the vicinity when history was made.
2nd and 8 at the 11. Whoops. Don Blackman was offside. Suey is in the end zone for a touchdown.
You'll see number 55, and he just got off too quickly and then stopped, and that's the mistake. You never stop on defense when you go offside, because that's exactly what can happen to you.
Here it is from the other side with Blackman out of the play, and a fine cut by Suey. And the big fullback, who had only 1 touchdown all season long, can relish that score here in Super Bowl 20. Moorhead, one of the tight ends in motion. Perry, what drives through, and following behind is McMahon for the touchdown. Here's Perry driving, faking, and then just driving somebody. Oh, my goodness. Did he destroy Larry McGrew? Perry is in the refrigerator. He's the lone setback now, and it's all disguised. McMahon rolls in a somersault 6, and the Bears lead 29-3.
Quarterback sneak. Ditka, as you told us earlier, put it back into the book for him.
First of all, the reality of first and goal. Perry. That one registered 3.8. Another Super Bowl record, the first refrigerator to score.
And the largest running back ever to score a touchdown.
Look at this. better open the door at that end. He's coming. They're getting ready to carry. Ditka doesn't want to go yet. He says, wait till I see that final second. Who's going to argue with Perry? He wins most of those. Walter Payton, Mike Ditka, hungry Chicago, finally champions on this January day in New Orleans. 46-10, the final.
In Super Bowl, there is no draw. There can only be a winner. Those gracious gestures in storming victory and crushing defeat exemplified much of what went on here beneath the hype of Super Bowl. It was no match, of course, to write home about, and how ironic it should happen in a year when American football is creating so much more interest in Britain. But three things struck me forcibly: the brilliant business organization of American football, the enduring charm of New Orleans, and above all, the exemplary behavior of the rival fans.